As long as UFOs remain in the air and perform impossible acrobatics, we can all enjoy arguments about who is hallucinating. And the military can tell the anxious citizens you did not see a flying saucer. That was Venus, or swamp gas, or migrating geese, or whatever. But all that changes when the UFO lands and aliens disembark.
Birds, such as gulls, simply don't make the kinds of accelerated turns at high speeds that were measured on the film.
As even more dramatic evidence of interplanetary penetration, we can look to Siberia just after the turn of the century. An unidentified space object hurtled toward Earth at over 30,000 miles an hour. Trailing streams of fire, it broke into our atmosphere, and then came the explosion. Equal in force to a thermonuclear blast.
White lights. Okay, so this didn't happen in the States, but Canada. And all I'm saying is that Biden could get some info out of Mr. Trudeau if he really wanted to. On January 29th, 2023, Canadian air traffic controllers and pilots couldn't identify two white lights moving in a circular pattern reported over Canada's Northwest Territories. Good evening, just wondering, do you got two planes that are just to the east of your field doing circuits or maneuvers? A crew member aboard the Canadian North flight headed to Yellowknife asked their traffic controllers. Negative, I have no reported traffic in the area, the Yellowknife air traffic controller replied. Do you have a visual on something? The crew responded somewhat hesitantly, yeah, we're looking at two lights dancing around here to the east of your field. They're above us, about I don't know what. We're not seeing them on TCAS, traffic collision avoidance system, but we can see the lights moving around. Then there's a pause before the crew member radios back to say, we're not crazy. No, we believe you, the air traffic controller replies, and the sighting remains unexplained. I need answers, people. Why are there just two random lights in the sky? Number 9. Over New Mexico. On February 21st, 2021, a pilot flying over New Mexico at an altitude of 37,000 feet reported seeing a long cylindrical object that almost looked like a cruise missile type of thing moving really fast over the top of them, according to the published audio. American Airlines confirmed that the radio transmission came from Flight 2292. The FAA a few days later stated a pilot reported seeing an object over New Mexico shortly after noon local time on Sunday, February 21st, 2021. FAA air traffic controllers did not see any object in the area on their radar scopes. Seems like air traffic control can never see these objects, but the pilots can, and I can't tell if that's better or worse. Number 8. Shot down object over Alaska. On February 10th, 2023, aka like a month ago, the US military shot down an unidentified airborne object over northeastern Alaska. US officials said they believed the object to be a balloon, but couldn't confirm it since it broke into pieces after hitting the ocean, the New York Times reported. How convenient. News outlets owned by the Chinese Communist Party said Biden's response has shown the world how immature and irresponsible the US has been in dealing with this case. Oof, even other people are criticizing him. Number 7. Shot down object over Lake Huron. On February 12th, 2023, just 2 days later, a US F-16 jet shot down an unidentified object over Lake Huron. An octagonal object with strings hanging from it was detected over northern Montana, Wisconsin, and the upper peninsula of Michigan at 20,000 feet. This was believed to be the same object tracked over Montana and monitored by the government the night before. Melissa Dalton, Assistant Defense Secretary of Homeland Defense, and General Glenn Venherk, head of U.S. North Command, say officials could not definitively assess what the objects were, so they acted out of an abundance of caution to protect U.S. security and interest. These most recent objects did not pose a military threat, but their path and proximity to sensitive DoD sites and the altitude that they were flying could be a hazard to civilian aviation and thus raise concerns, Melissa said. Operations are underway with multiple agencies, including the Coast Guard, to get gather the object's remains and determine where it came from, they added. And when or if they figure out what it is, I wonder if they'll actually tell us. Probably not though. Number 6. Rosemount UFOs. A man living in Rosemount said he encountered a similar UFO on 4 separate occasions. On August 4th, 2017, the man was near his Rosemount home when he saw what he described as a black object with bright orange lights coming from the craft and flying over the area. Nearly a month later, on September 6, 2017, he saw 3 crafts with the same description hovering above downtown Rosemont. 2 days later, a singular craft returned to Inver Grove Heights, and he spotted the craft one last time on March 12, 2018. The man took photos or videos for each of the events and submitted it to the Mutual UFO Network. Seems like these aliens could have been stalking him, which I think is even more creepy. Number 5. Navy pilots. Recently, 2 former Navy pilots were interviewed by 60 Minutes on CBS News about a UFO sighting over the Pacific Ocean in 2004. Commander Dave Fravor and Lieutenant Commander Alex Dietrich spotted the unidentified object during a training exercise, but were unable to classify it. Dave described it as a little white tic-tac looking object, adding that it lacked conventional exhaust plumes and had no wings or visible markings. It also moved erratically, the pilot said. In an interview with NBC News, Dave described the 2004 encounter, calling the object the strangest, most obscure thing I've ever seen flying. As soon as we look down, we see the white water, and then we see this little white tic-tac. It's pointing north-south, and it's just going forward, back, left, right, he said, adding that it was bouncing around like a ping-pong ball. Dave said he approached the mysterious object to take a closer look, and it began mirroring his movements. Then, when the pilot decided to get within half a mile of the UFO, it suddenly vanished. I'm surprised the government even let them do this interview, but my question is, if he did get closer, what were they gonna do? Wave hi to the aliens? Number 4. Multiple objects in the sky. Ryan Graves, a former Navy pilot who testified that he witnessed unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAP, with his own eyes, and he called on President Joe Biden to investigate the mysterious objects spotted in American airspace. Ryan, a former fighter pilot, explained that after 2014, when upgrades were made to our radar system, our squadron made a startling discovery. There were unknown objects in our airspace. And these were not mere balloons like the Chinese spy balloon that dominated the country's attention in February. These were no mere balloons. They could hold their position, appearing motionless, despite Category 4 hurricane force winds of 120 knots. They did not have any visible means to lift or control surfaces. In other words, nothing that resembled normal aircraft with wings, flaps, or engines. These are not isolated incidents, Ryan said. We have a real UFO problem, and it's not balloons. The point is that we don't have as clear as an understanding of what's above our heads as we thought we did. There are uncertainties up there that we have to deal with. If we don't do it, our adversaries are going to take advantage of that uncertainty, that weakness, to spy on us with various means, as we've seen. It's pretty clear. If there are things over our head that we're not sure what they are, we need to figure it out. If they're adversarial, it's a national security issue. We have mechanisms for that. If it's not a national security issue, and if it's not an adversarial platform, then it's a matter for scientific inquiry. Not gonna lie, this scares me a little. Number 3. Leaked video. A leaked Navy video captured in July 2019 showed a sphere-shaped unidentified object flying over water near San Diego. The footage, obtained by documentary filmmaker and shared with NBC News, appeared to show the mysterious object flying for a few minutes before disappearing into the water. The video was captured by a Navy aircraft and recorded in the USS Alma's Combat Information Center, according to filmmaker Jeremy Corbell. The clip appeared to show a spherical object flying above the water for a few minutes near San Diego before it just vanishes. It splashed, military personnel can be heard saying in the video. The Defense Department confirmed that the clip was recorded by Navy personnel and said that it will be reviewed by the Pentagon's Unidentified Aerial Phenomena Task Force, a panel established last year to gain insight into the nature and origins of such objects. Number 2. You saw something you shouldn't. In 2008, a large aircraft hovered above Stevensville, Texas. Many people in the community saw it, and according to to the Mutual UFO Network, a pilot named Steve Allen reported that the unusual aircraft was flying at an estimated 3,000 miles per hour and was being chased by fighter jets. Then a man named Rick Sorrell said he saw the same thing while hunting. Later, Rick said a strange man knocked on his door and said, "Son, we have the same caliber weapons you have, but we have more of them. You need to shut your mouth about what you saw." Creepy. Was this the Men in Black, people from their government, or real aliens? Who knows, but if that happened to me, I think I'd move out of state. And coming in at number 1 is the Pentagon. The Pentagon's new Office for Investigating Potential UFO Sightings received hundreds of news reports in 2022, and while it can explain more than half of these events, a sizable chunk remains a mystery. Within the new batch of sightings, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office and the Office of Director of National Intelligence say they're focusing on some 171 cases, including some in which objects appear to have demonstrated unusual flight characteristics or performance capabilities and require further analysis. Since it was formed last summer, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office has received 366 reports of unidentified aerial phenomena, or UAP. That total reflects 247 new UAP reports and another 119 that occurred between March 2021 but hadn't been included in an earlier report. The new numbers indicate a steep rise in UAP sightings. The report released in June 2021 listed just 144 reports covering a 17-year period. With the subsequent additions, 510 UAP reports were in their files at the end of August 2022. Officials say they believe the rise in UAP reports is due to the US government efforts to destigmatize the topic of UAP and instead recognize the potential risk the phenomenon poses, both as an aviation hazard and potential adversarial activity, such as foreign surveillance efforts. I don't know though, it seems like they're really starting to believe in aliens to me.
So we're starting off with a photo that was apparently lost for decades, but just resurfaced a few years ago. The Calvine photo, said to be one of the most convincing UFO photographs ever taken. On August 4th of 1990, two men who were working as chefs in a hotel in the Scottish Highlands decided to go for a walk that summer evening in the hills near Calvine. And in the middle of their hike, they spotted something in the sky, this big diamond-shaped object hovering up there. Apparently it made little to no noise as well. They managed to snap this picture here. The hikers sent the image to the paper, but instead of printing it, the newspaper handed it over to the British Ministry of Defence, and they kept it under wraps until 2022, when British journalist David Clarke finally brought it back into the light. After digging for 13 years, Clarke, who teaches at Sheffield Hallam University, discovered that a former Royal Air Force press officer, Craig Lindsay, had a copy of the photo all along, waiting for someone to ask about it. Clarke also had his colleague Andrew Robinson, a photography expert, examine the photo. Robinson found no evidence of tampering or manipulation. So, is this flying object of extraterrestrial origin? Well, Clarke believes it is a genuine UFO, just maybe not an alien aircraft. He thinks it could be the rumored Aurora, a super secret spy plane supposedly built by the US in the 80s.
Next up on our list today, we have a series of photographs of real-life aliens found in 2017 in Peru near the pre-Columbian Nazca lines. Analysis done on the body of the aliens, named Clara and Mauricio, showed that they are at least 1,000 years old and that their genetic makeup is not of this world. Although the findings are controversial, that's to be expected, and widely disputed, also expected, many people believe that Clara and Mauricio are modern civilization's first look at real-life humanoid alien bodies, and they see the discovery as a major scientific advancement in relation to our understanding of extraterrestrial beings. The lead researcher on the case said that the bodies, with 3 fingers on each hand and elongated heads, were found with another, going by the name of Victoria, which was used to conduct the tests that determined the age of the bodies and the genetic material. In the report, lead researcher Musan also stated that Victoria had been carrying eggs inside of her, meaning that it was likely these creatures were able to reproduce offspring and that Victoria was getting ready to when she died. Whether or not the whole thing is a big elaborate hoax remains to be seen. However, despite harsh criticism coming from Hassan's peers and the scientific community as a whole, he continues to maintain the validity of his findings, making this kind of believable.
Take a look at these wild photos. These are some genuinely unsettling images right here. There's a lot of mystery behind these pictures. There's still no definitive explanation for them. All we know is that the photos surfaced about 10 years back. Supposedly, they were taken from a US submarine traveling between Iceland and islands near Norway. Alex Mistretta, a paranormal investigator, started looking into these pictures after they popped up in a French magazine called Top Secret, following a supposed leak. The photos were allegedly snapped in March of 1971 through the submarine USS Trepang's periscope during a regular military and science mission. A guy named John Kalika first spotted the UFOs through the periscope. We don't know who actually took the images. The pics were shared to the public by Alex after he saw them in that magazine, and there were some curious notes on the back of one of the photos. It said official photograph, not to be released, CT, and another note that read unauthorized disclosure subject security certificate SSN 674 criminal sanction. I don't know, what do you guys think of these? Genuine? Hoax? I mean, some of these images are pretty insane. I mean, if they weren't doctored in any way.
Next on our list today, we have the McMinnville UFO photographs taken in none other than Sheridan, Oregon, approximately 9 miles southwest of McMinnville by a local farming couple, Paul and Evelyn Trent. On May 11th of 1950, the pair spotted these strange objects in the sky and rushed to grab their camera. They then captured some of the most captivating UFO images to date. It was Evelyn who first noticed the alleged spacecraft hovering in the sky above the farm. She yelled for her husband Paul, who also confirmed the sighting and was the one to capture the images. Paul's father also claimed to have caught a glimpse of the object before it sped off into the sky. Don't know why I did that. A third-party analysis confirmed that the photographs were not doctored and that they showed a real physical object in the sky above the Trent family farm, and that the object was sitting at a significant distance from the lens of the camera. So basically, it was proven that it wasn't just some kind of bug flying nearby the lens. Whether or not you believe in aliens, UFOs, or UAPs, you gotta admit these images are pretty cool.
In 2023, the Pentagon released footage that was taken in the Middle East the previous year. The footage was captured on July 12th, 2022 with an MQ-9 Reaper drone. They're still not sure what this object is. The mysterious orb footage was shown to a congressional committee as part of a defense update on UFOs or UAPs. We can clearly see a small round object that looks like it's shimmering as it flies over houses and empty fields. Sean Kirkpatrick, who heads the Pentagon's All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the AARO, mentioned that this footage is pretty much all the info they have on this thing. They don't know where it came from or what its purpose was. The Pentagon also disclosed that they were looking into over 650 incidents involving UFOs.
Next up, if we are going to do a video about real alien photos, I feel it's only right to include a photograph of the most famous UFO sighting and interaction to date, the Battle of Los Angeles, or the Great Los Angeles Air Raid, which took place on February 23rd of 1942, just 2 months after the attack on Pearl Harbor. The night the photo was taken, all of Los Angeles was directed to go under blackout by the US military. After all the lights on the ground turned off, the sky above LA was suddenly lit up by a large handful of strange, unidentified flying objects. The military then opened fired into the sky, and the public watched in utter shock as 1,400 rounds of ammunition fired at the airborne, seemingly extraterrestrial objects appeared to have no effect whatsoever. Smoke filled the sky, and when it cleared, not a single craft was to be found in the sky or on the ground. 5 civilians died after being hit by materials that appeared to have ricocheted off of the intended targets. 3 were killed in car accidents due to the chaos of the event, and 2 more died of heart attacks due to the stress of the event, which was 2 hours long in total. If this isn't legit, I don't know what is. That's pretty crazy.
Next up, we have some mysterious UFO footage that was taken in Wales. So in September of 2016, a police helicopter flying over the Bristol Channel in Wales around 9 p.m. spotted something in the sky. It was only visible on the chopper's thermal camera, cruising at about 106 miles per hour against the wind. Former cop Gary Haseline later released the full video footage, urging the UK government to come forward with whatever they knew about UFOs. Of course, they didn't. Police thought it could have been a drone at first, but the object was moving pretty fast. Faster than any known models at the time. Apparently the thing was picked up by local air traffic control and emitted heat. Haseline stated, "This is verified police helicopter FLIR footage showing an object not seen with the naked eye but clearly seen in the infrared spectrum. It is moving against the wind, so it is not a balloon, nor is it emitting any heat signature indicating a propulsion system."
Next up, we have a photograph taken on May 1st of 1952 at 7:58 a.m. by George Adamski, who claims to have seen multiple UFOs flying over his backyard in Mount Palomar during the 1940s all the way through to the 1960s. Although many renowned UFO experts have been unable to back his claims, Adamski maintains firm in his belief that he was able to capture not only this image of a cigar-shaped mothership flying in front of the moon seen here, but also the image of 6 unidentified flying objects he believes to be alien spacecrafts arising from the moon and flying in formation, which you can now see here. These images gained such notoriety in their time that for a while a rendering of the 6 spacecraft photograph was featured in a postage stamp in Grenada in 1978. Not only did Adamski claim to have taken a number of other images, which were unfortunately destroyed, he also claimed to have communicated with the aliens aboard these ships using symbols, hand gestures, and even telepathy. Whether or not he's telling the truth, I personally believe he would make a hell of an entertaining dinner guest.
This footage was captured in 2004 by Mexican Air Force pilots. They'd been on a routine flight when they spotted several glowing objects on their infrared cameras. They couldn't actually see the objects with the naked eye. There were 13 of these objects in total, flying over the skies of southern Campeche state. This is a solid piece of footage right here. At one point we get a nice long look at the glowing objects flying in perfect formation across the sky, and yeah, I don't know what they are. I mean, I'm not an expert or anything, but the pilots also had no idea what they were picking up and tried to pursue the objects, but they just lost track of them. They flew away at incredible speed. The footage wasn't released until 2010, and ever since, it's been cited as one of the most convincing examples of a genuine piece of UFO footage.
And finally, we have some more video footage coming to us straight from the declassifieds. I'm talking about UFO documents released to the public by the Pentagon after so many years of adamantly denying the existence of such phenomena. On January 15th of 2023, cameras were set up to survey an MQ-9 Reaper aircraft when all of a sudden, an unidentified aerial presence was captured on that same video, moving at speeds unreachable by any kind of modern-day aircraft. It was shocking to say the least, but it actually gets crazier. The object was moving so fast that it appeared to actually disrupt the atmosphere surrounding the craft, leaving behind an atmospheric wake in lieu of a jet stream as it disappeared completely into the sky. It sounds pretty unbelievable, but as I said, the footage was literally released by the Pentagon, who have done a complete 180 on their denial of UFOs and have now actually asked the public to come forward and submit any authentic images or encounters with UFOs or UAPs to the All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, the ADARO, but I would personally love it if you shared any stories you have down below.
Navy UFO sighting. So back in 2020, the Pentagon released video footage taken by United States naval aviators of strange objects hurling through the sky. They moved in ways no known aircraft does, and pilots described them seeming to defy the laws of physics. In these series of videos, they're completely confused and shocked about what they're seeing. The videos were recorded back in 2004, so the Pentagon were holding on to these for a long time, and the fact that they were finally released really says something about how much of this could be going on. They can't keep it under wraps any longer. It's getting to the point now where even the government is like, yeah, people kind of need to be informed about at least some of it. I mean, who knows what they're still hiding though. If you're liking the channel so far, by the way, don't forget to hit that subscribe button. We got awesome content coming at you on the daily. At number 9 is the Kenneth Arnold UFO sighting. This is one of the most important UFO sightings in history. It happened on June 24th, 1947, and is a pivotal event in the history of UFOs. Now, NASA has not been established at this point, but the event made a huge impact on government policy regarding unidentified flying objects. Kenneth Arnold, a private pilot, reported seeing 9 strange crescent-shaped objects flying in a V formation near Mount Rainier in Washington. He estimated their speed at around 1,700 miles per hour, much faster than any known aircraft at the time, and Arnold's sighting received widespread media coverage, leading to increased public interest in UFOs. And this event is often considered the first modern-day UFO encounter. In the following weeks, there were numerous reports of UFO sightings across the United States, leading to the coining of the term flying saucer. This case also had a huge impact on government and military agencies. The US Air Force initiated Project Sign, the first official government investigation into UFOs. This eventually led to the formation of Project Blue Book, a long-running study of UFO sightings. So, this sighting not only heavily contributed to the curiosity surrounding UFOs and aliens that continues to this day in pop culture, but also contributed to the scientific inquiry and government policy when it comes to UAPs. Next up, we have Frank Shaw's gargoyle. So this one isn't your standard UAP in that it's a winged cryptid sighting, but it was seen by multiple NASA employees at the time, primarily Frank Shaw, who worked in Houston's Johns Space Center. On the night of the incident, Shaw was on his way back to his car at the end of his shift when he spotted something strange. It was what looked to be a massive winged humanoid creature perched on one of the Space Center buildings, almost like a gargoyle or bat creature, and suddenly it started unfurling its wings, which Shaw described making this crackling sound before it swooped into the air. Shaw was just stunned, unable to move, having no reference for what he had just witnessed. Suddenly he snapped out of it though, and he rushed to his car. Now, if this were just a one-time thing, I'd be like, alright, maybe he was just really tired, maybe he just saw something totally innocuous and just freaked himself out, yada yada. But it wasn't just a one-time thing. There were other employees at the station who had also encountered a winged creature. Apparently there had even been a file opened on the thing just a few months before Shaw saw it, after 2 German shepherds at the station had been found completely torn apart, and they were found in the same area that Shaw saw the creature. At number 7, we have high altitude objects. So the story here is that several mysterious high altitude objects were down in February of 2023 over various airspaces. You probably remember this in the news. We had objects being spotted over Canada and the United States, Latin America, China, Eastern Europe. Started when several unidentified objects were down over Alaska, the Yukon, and Lake Huron. The general of NORAD, Glenn D. Van Herk, made a statement saying the objects could be benign, but wasn't 100% sure. When asked if they could be of alien origin, though, he said he wasn't ruling anything out. It literally seems like government and military agencies are just starting to become more open to the idea of extraterrestrial life, or maybe some of them already are fully aware of their presence. Either way, though, it seems like they're being discussed openly more than ever before. It's not being written off as nonsense like it has been in the past. And here's another interesting part of these cases. There were recovery attempts made. Unfortunately, the objects landed in areas that aren't all that accessible though, so it made it pretty difficult, and the recovery missions were abandoned. Now, that's what they say, but what if the government did recover something that they just aren't ready or willing to show us? Who knows? At our number 6 spot, we have Oumuamua. This one's definitely been talked about plenty of times, including on this channel, but it's a recent article dated March 7th of this year that I'm mostly referring to. In a recent article written by Sean Kirkpatrick, head of the Pentagon's AARO, or All Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, which specializes in unidentified flying objects, and Harvard professor A.V. Loeb, they discussed the possibility that objects like Oumuamua spotted back in 2017 could be of alien origin. The article said that objects like the Oumuamua could be quote-unquote quote, a parent craft that releases many small probes during its close passage to Earth. They didn't just discuss the Oumuamua though, they were looking at a variety of unidentified probes. And they went on to speculate that these crafts could potentially power their batteries from starlight and that Earth's water could be fuel. There's some pretty wild stuff in there, and yes, a lot of it is speculative, but the fact that a highly respected scientist that spent 20 years studying physics is proposing these kinds of ideas, it's pretty fascinating. Coming at number 5, we have the Alaska sighting. The event began when Japan Airlines Flight 1628, a cargo plane, reported encountering an unidentified flying object during its flight. The pilot, Captain Kenju Taruchi, and his crew described seeing a massive disc-shaped object with glowing lights flying in close proximity to their aircraft while flying over Alaska. They also reported that the object displayed erratic movements, seemingly defying the laws of physics. Ground radar stations at Anchorage International Airport even tracked an unidentified craft that matched the flight's description. The radar data not only confirmed the presence of an unknown object, but also its proximity to the airplane. And after the incident, all of the data, including the radar records, was reportedly collected and presented at a meeting with officials from the FBI and the CIA. According to witnesses, these government agencies acknowledged the radar recording as evidence of a genuine UFO, but they later disavowed any knowledge of such a meeting. Number 4, the Richard French sighting. Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Richard French was an investigator for Project Blue Book in the 1950s. Long after retirement at a citizen hearing on disclosure in 2013, French made a shocking statement. His job had been to solve cases involving supposed UFOs, usually by debunking them, but as it turns out, he had actually seen one himself, although he hadn't included it in his report at the time. The 83-year-old described an incident that took place during an investigation off the coast of St. John's, Newfoundland back in the day. 2 mysterious aircrafts had reportedly crashed into the water. He had followed a group of about 100 onlookers on a nearby wharf and described seeing 2 to 3 foot tall beings, thin and gray, looking to be repairing their vessels. He then watched in awe as the crafts rose out of the water before flying off at incredible speeds. Next up, we have the Phoenix Lights. On March 13th, 1997 in Phoenix, Arizona, USA, thousands of residents reported seeing a series of strange lights in the sky. The lights were described as bright and hovering slowly in a V-shaped formation. This event unfolded in 2 parts. First, there were reports of lights moving slowly across the state from the northern to the southern region. Then, later in the evening, a stationary V-shaped formation appeared over Phoenix and lingered for several minutes before vanishing. The official explanation initially attributed to the lights was military flares being dropped during a training exercise, but this explanation didn't match the descriptions given by witnesses who reported a massive silent object blocking out the stars. Some speculated it was a UFO, while others believed it to be a secret military aircraft. At our number 2 spot, we have the Rendlesham Forest incident. The Rendlesham Forest incident, also known as Britain's Roswell, is one of the most well-documented UFO events in history. It occurred in late December of 1980 near Royal Air Force Woodridge, or RAF Woodridge, a US Air Force base located in Suffolk, England. Over a couple nights, multiple military personnel reported encountering strange lights and objects in the forest adjacent to the base. On the night of December 26, 1980, U.S. Air Force personnel, including Deputy Base Commander Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, investigated reports of unusual lights in Rendlesham Forest. They witnessed strange colored lights in the sky and on the ground. Halt recorded his observations on an audio tape describing the lights as red, green, and blue, and confirmed the presence of an unidentified craft. 2 nights earlier, on December 24, 1980, security personnel at RAF Woodridge reported seeing a triangular-shaped object with red and blue lights hovering above the forest. It appeared to land and leave impressions on the ground, and when radiation readings were allegedly taken at the site, it indicated unusually high levels. And finally, we have the 1952 Washington, D.C. UFO incident, also known as the Washington Flap. During 2 consecutive weeks in July of 1952, a series of UFO sightings occurred in the airspace over Washington, D.C. On the night of July 19, 1952, radar operators at Washington National Airport detected a cluster of these unknown objects flying at very high speeds. Witnesses on the ground reported seeing bright lights moving erratically in the sky. Similar sightings recurred on the night of July 20th, prompting the U.S. Air Force to scramble fighter jets in pursuit of these objects. Pilots reported seeing the objects visually, describing them as glowing lights that defied the laws of physics with their sudden accelerations and maneuvers. The CIA took a keen interest in this case, conducting its own investigation. Declassified documents have since revealed that the CIA closely monitored the events and requested daily briefings on the sightings. To this day, these sightings have not been fully explained. We're starting off with one of the craziest UFO cases in Canada, the Carp, Ontario UFO case. Ever heard of it? Neither had I until today. The details of this case are pretty wild. It got some buzz at the time, it seems, but then the whole story just kind of faded away, or was intentionally swept under the rug. I don't know. In 1989, UFO researchers in Canada and the US began receiving tapes from a mysterious individual referring to himself simply as the Guardian. In these tapes was footage of what looked to be an unidentified flying object. Along with the footage, all these documents were also included, supposedly taken from Canada's Department of National Defense. The documents detailed a UFO that had crash landed just outside the village of Carp, and apparently it wasn't just wreckage that was found, but alien corpses as well, which were all taken away to be studied in underground research facilities in Ottawa, according to this Guardian person. But it wasn't just the Guardian individual who'd seen things. A lot of locals had their own encounters with mysterious objects in the sky as well. News crews and UFO researchers started flocking to the area, and the story was even featured on an episode of Unsolved Mysteries. Back in 2020, there was a CBC documentary about the case. A film crew headed to Carp to try and find some answers. They didn't solve the mystery, but they did speak to a number of locals about what they saw, and it became pretty clear that something went down 30-something years ago.
Next up, we have galactic cannibalism, which is pretty much exactly what it sounds like. Galaxies eating other galaxies. Pretty crazy theory, right? Wrong. While it is crazy, it's most certainly not a theory, but rather a daunting reality. In fact, just 2 billion years ago, which is kind of like 2 seconds when you take into account the never-ending vastness of time and space, the Andromeda Galaxy, aka the closest galaxy to our very own the Milky Way, swallowed up a sister galaxy whose stars now sit in the halo surrounding Andromeda, like trophy heads on the wall of a skilled hunter. As for the planets of the devoured galaxy, well, they were destroyed in the ordeal. Only stars and stardust remain of what was once a thriving galaxy that very well might have held the answers to some of the universe's greatest questions. But I mean, I'm sure that won't happen to us. Actually, no, I'm pretty sure it will, seeing as NASA themselves said that the Milky Way is set to meet the same fate as the previously gobbled up galaxy sometime within the next 4.5 billion years, or in the scheme of things, 4.5 seconds. Gotta love science.
Here's a story NASA probably wished never leaked. An air leak in the International Space Station. Thing about this air leak though, it looked like it had been made intentionally. In August of 2018, a small hole was found in the International Space Station, causing a slight air leak. Russian crew members patched it up temporarily with tape until they could fix it properly. Now, it turns out the hole had been drilled from the inside. It was about 2 millimeters wide and had been hidden with a, quote, low-quality patch job. Russian officials suspected sabotage during manufacturing and even pointed fingers at NASA crew members on the mission. Fast forward to 2021, a Russian tabloid came out with a pretty wild theory that a crew member may have drilled the hole after a blood clot had developed in her jugular vein. NASA just dismissed that theory. Then Roscosmos handed over the investigation to law enforcement with a new theory, that the hole was drilled by an American astronaut on board after emotional distress she'd suffered because of a failed romantic relationship with another crew member. None of these theories have ever been proven. Who the hell knows what actually went down here? We'll probably never find out.
Next up, what's the matter? Strange matter. I feel like there's really nothing scarier than NASA discovering an entirely new form of matter so perplexing that they literally decided to name it strange matter. Okay, well, they haven't actually discovered it yet. Currently, it's just a theory, but a pretty scary one nonetheless. Strange matter is currently a hypothetical substance that, under the right circumstances, can actually eat other matter by converting it into strange matter. Unlike regular matter, which is made up of atoms with a nucleus, which contains protons and neutrons made up of neatly packed quarks, the quarks found in strange matter are erratic, running free inside of the protons and neutrons with no rhyme, reason, rules, or boundaries. Scientists believe that this strange matter is likely to be found on neutron stars, which we've got about 1 billion of in our Milky Way. If even the smallest amount of strange matter were to make its way to Earth, it is possible that it would begin to gobble up all of the matter around us, turning it into clones of itself and destroying life as we know it. But I'm sure there's nothing to worry about, right?
Winged man-bat cryptids aren't something you typically associate with NASA, but that's exactly why I've always found this next story so tantalizing. Is tantalizing the right word? Probably not. A NASA employee named Frank Shaw, working at Houston's Johnson Space Center, had a terrifying encounter while leaving work one night in 1986. Shaw had returned home in the evening completely shell-shocked. His wife and daughter were concerned and asked him what was going on. And after some prying, he finally attempted to explain what he'd seen. He'd been walking back to his car when he spotted something perched on top of one of the Space Center buildings. He described it as a black humanoid figure with bat-like wings, like a gargoyle. And as Shaw stared at this thing, trying to figure out what the hell he was looking at, he started feeling this intense feeling, like this creature seemed to be enjoying how much it was scaring him. It continued staring directly at him before it began to unfurl its wings, which apparently made this awful crackling sound. Then it took flight, and that's when Shaw snapped out of it and knew it was time to get the hell out of there. He fumbled with his keys, but finally made it into his car and raced home. When he finally gathered the courage to share his experience with his supervisor, he was surprised to learn that other staff had also reported similar encounters. There had even been a file opened about the creature after 2 German shepherds were found mutilated in the same area Shaw had encountered the creature. Shaw's story eventually reached higher ups at NASA, who apparently interrogated him and warned him to keep quiet about his encounter.
Next up, we've got the Sun Eater, a massive quasar, which is a black hole with energetic jets beaming out from 2 sides that swallows up the equivalent of one of our suns per day. Going by the name Quasar J0529-4351, this thing is 17 billion times larger than our sun, and it's located just 12 billion light years away. It's also the fastest growing black hole ever recorded. It was first detected by Australian scientists at the Australian National University, who noticed the distinct beams of light traveling from the sides of the giant, which is located inside of the Pictor constellation inside of an irregular dwarf galaxy. The quasar is also the most luminous object ever observed by modern day humans, of course. Who knows what the ancient Egyptians saw while building the pyramids?
There's a distant star that seems to be acting kind of strangely, and it's led to some pretty exciting theories. Instead of shining steadily like most stars, Tabby's star, known scientifically as KIC 8462852, dims in irregular patterns that are hard to predict. Sometimes it dims much more than what we'd expect from a normal star. There's a lot of speculation as to what's causing this dimming. Some researchers are saying there could be gigantic structures built by advanced alien civilizations around the star. These structures could be enormous, like Dyson spheres or swarms, and their purpose might be to harvest the star's energy or block its light. Just one possibility among many. Scientists are considering it because they can't fully explain the star's behavior using more conventional explanations. But hey, Still pretty cool they're even bringing it up.
Next on our list, we have mutant bacteria discovered aboard the ISS. As many of us know, bacteria being found in, on, or around the ISS is really nothing new. Not only that, but overall the bacteria found are associated with human skin, which leads us to believe that the bacteria neither originated nor were they created in space. That means the same thing. But rather they were brought to the ISS by the astronauts and cosmonauts of the space station themselves. In recent years, however, bacteria have been more purposefully brought to the ISS as scientists attempt to solve the mystery of how viruses both survive and act in space. And the findings are pretty freaky. Not long after NASA sent drug-resistant Enterobacter buginensis bacteria, I'm so sorry about that pronunciation, to be isolated on the space station, they noticed that it had actually mutated into something that was both genetically and functionally distinct from its Earth counterparts. Not only that, but they found that this new mutant bacteria could coexist with multiple other organisms, and in some cases it actually aided to their survival as well. So basically scientists took an already drug-resistant, disease-causing bacteria into space to have it not only mutate, but also aid other potentially harmful bacteria in their own space survival as well. Cool. Cool. I love that for us.
In 1986, a Japan Airlines flight had a disturbing encounter while flying over eastern Alaska. Japan Airlines Flight 1628 was a cargo plane piloted by Captain Kenju Tarachi. He and his crew reported spotting this huge disc-shaped object with glowing lights flying close to their plane. This object moved in strange ways, unlike any known aircraft they'd ever seen. Even radar stations on the ground at Anchorage International Airport saw something on their screens that matched the description given by the flight crew. Radar data showed that there was indeed an unknown object near the airplane, and when the crew landed in Anchorage, they were reported to be of sound mind. They weren't on any illicit substances or anything like that. After the incident, all the data, including radar records, was collected and shown to officials from the FBI and the CIA. Witnesses say that these government agencies agreed that the radar data was proof of some kind of UFO, but later on, they denied ever having any knowledge of the incident.
And finally, in true Most Amazing Top 10 NASA series fashion, the 10th terrifying thing NASA hid from public knowledge is another alien thing, and it's just how serious they are about UFOs and UAPs, unidentified aerial phenomena. I'm sure you all know that there are countless images and videos of unidentified aerial phenomena circulating around the internet. Not only that, but a handful of them have actually been verified by the United States government and the Pentagon. When you take this all into account, it's really no wonder that scientists at NASA, the United States of America's leading space experts, are taking the existence of these UAPs and the possible existence of extraterrestrials quite seriously. In fact, so seriously that in 2023 it was revealed by BBC News that NASA had taken a serious deep dive into the UAP universe and that they were set to release their findings sometime in the near future. I, for one, am looking forward to seeing what they might find, although it's highly likely that they won't tell us the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I mean, they do like to hide things from public knowledge, but who knows, maybe we get lucky. Starting us off today, we have a mission documented to the public by none other than Bob Lazar. You might have heard of him before. The mission took place in the 1980s and involved the reverse engineering of an extraterrestrial spacecraft fueled by an element that was supposedly undiscovered at the time and wouldn't be openly discovered until 2003 when a team of Russian and American scientists were able to synthesize it. The element was element 115, also known as moscovium. It's super heavy and highly radioactive and apparently out of this world, much like the spaceship Lazar claims to have worked on while working as an engineer on the base. He said that the spaceship had been collected by the agency along with 8 others. It was taken apart piece by piece and then replicated by the Area 51 51 team. The engineering mission was a success, and the homemade alien spacecraft took its first flight right in front of Bob Lazar's eyes. He claimed that it was nothing like anything he had ever seen before. It did not need any form of acceleration prior to takeoff, but rather the vessel lifted directly into the air and had the ability to fly at unseen speeds. Next up, we have the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Mission. That's a mouthful. A secret mission that operated out of the base with the purpose of identifying airborne threats to American land and its people, whether the threats be out of this world or not. I guess it makes sense that this was a classified mission. I mean, who really wants either a threat or target to know that they've got eyes on them? Since the operation began, it's become declassified, but it remains highly unpublicized, most likely due to censoring, along with the fact that there's really not much we know about it other than the fact that that's the name of it, and that's pretty much it. Sources have come forward, however, insisting that the program, which operated for 5 years between 2007 and 2012, with a budget of $22 million, was created for something much larger than international threats, claiming that the majority of the budget was dedicated to identifying and capturing intergalactic ones instead. Which of course brings us to the Roswell cover-up and others like it, aka the ongoing mission of the base to keep Americans and the rest of the world in the dark about what's really going on in our skies, our atmosphere, and our galaxy. The Roswell incident follows an aircraft that crash landed in the field of a farmer in New Mexico. When Area 51 got news of the incident, they rushed to collect all the pieces and cover up all traces of the wreck. They claimed it was a weather balloon but never released any proof. And on top of that, what they collected from the farmer's property was sent to multiple other bases for a more in-depth analysis. If it was actually a weather balloon, I really don't see why that would be necessary. Of course, this isn't the only possible UFO cover-up known to date. Multiple sightings of UFOs have been reported and subsequently debunked, quote unquote, by officials at Area 51, but they rarely provide any information beyond a statement saying, "It's not what you think it is." Well, I don't think I believe them. Next up, we have hazardous waste disposal and the possible underground testing that took place in, on, around, or under Groom Lake, also known as Papoose Lake. That's a fun one to say, papoose. On January 30th of 1996, US President Bill Clinton signed a presidential declaration exempting the Air Force operations near the lake from having to comply with federal, state, interstate, or local hazardous or solid waste laws based on the grounds that it might require the disclosure of classified information. Wild! As you can imagine, this was terrible for locals in the area. I mean, the lake became illegal hazardous waste dumping ground. A lawsuit was filed alleging that the base had gone against the Conservation and Recovery Act in the area, but have no fear. In September of 2003, US President George W. Bush reiterated the fact that the military base was well within their rights to continue their lawless and potentially harmful waste disposal free of charge and without interference from the law. In the spring of 1997, 1 year after the allowance was originally granted, a man named Jerry Freeman somehow snuck his way onto the base and became the first civilian to see the lake after the hazardous disposals had begun. He described it as dried up and vibrating from the center with like a pulsing light, which led him to theorize that secret government experiments might possibly be taking place underneath or around the lake as well. Next up, we've got Mission Totally Spies. Not really, but it was totally a mission that involved a spy plane, more specifically the Lockheed U-2 spy plane, a United States aircraft that in August of 1955 had the ability to fly up to 70,000 feet high at 500 miles per hour. That's super advanced for the time. The reason that the plane was engineered, built, and tested on the base was because Area 51 is massive, which allowed the process of inventing, testing, and deploying the plane to take place virtually undetected. Well, kinda. I mean, the Soviets didn't see it, so that was a win for sure. Some locals did, and when they first saw the plane, they actually believed it to be some kind of alien spacecraft, which may lend a reason as to why the base became so intermingled with extraterrestrial folklore. For a while, the government let this line of thinking slide, but eventually revealed that what had been seen in the skies around Area 51 was in fact an advanced piece of espionage technology, or so they say. Okay, another great use for a massive secret base. probably nuclear testing, right? Yeah, I think so. Do you think so? Because the fellows over at Area 51 definitely thought so. The base became a nuclear testing facility during the 1950s after the US, along with Canada and the United Kingdom, created the first nuclear weapon, aka the Manhattan Project. The base was used to test the severity and the risk level of the weapon, as well as its impact on environmental factors, along with environmental restoration techniques. A hazardous materials spill center was also built on the base, but I think we all know exactly how the majority of the hazardous waste was handled. Papoose. A crap ton of fission-type nuclear devices were detonated in the area, as well as dirty bombs, which are radioactive dispersal devices that combine radioactive material with conventional explosives. This led to a permanent change in the area's landscape, and to this day, the soils of the Nevada test site remain contaminated with radioactive materials. We are all aware that censorship is rampant in this day and age, but it's really nothing new, as highlighted by the publishing and quick removal of a photograph showcasing the base. The image was taken in 1998 by a Russian spy satellite. I'm not sure if they knew at the time that they had just struck American gold, but it seems as though in 2000 they came to realize exactly what they had achieved. The first ever photograph taken of Area 51, and from an aerial point of view no less, was released to the public. It was posted on a website called terraserver.com, which charged viewers around $7 to see the image. And it was actually totally legal, because in 1992 the Open Skies Treaty dictated that all 24 signatory nations, meaning all 24 nations who signed the treaty, had permission to photograph and publish each other's territories. What's strange though, is that shortly after the release of the photograph, the website was hacked and the photo disappeared. A website that was working just fine without any issues for years prior. After the image was released, the Pentagon did, however, finally acknowledge the fact that they did, in fact, have a large military base operating in Nevada, but provided no information regarding said operations. While the photo was removed back then, it's now back on the internet and available today. Speaking of the Pentagon, it seems as though in 2020 the public finally got their wish when the Pentagon finally declassified a number of videos and photographs that we were, all well aware that they had. I'm talking UFOs, baby. The Pentagon released the photos and videos on their official website, showcasing a variety of unidentified flying objects and aerial phenomena. Along with this, the FBI also declassified 16 documents outlining their thoughts and findings on the matter, although a lot of the information in the documents has been redacted. So the truth is out there. The government has admitted to having a secret base and to having been actively tracking UFO and UAP activities. But here is the thing. Are they feeding us this information because they really truly have decided to be transparent in their quest to uncover the secrets of the universe, or are they feeding us to keep our mouths shut? So apparently, before all the nukes and aliens and hazardous waste and spy planes and secrets, Area 51 was nothing more than a humble testing and training facility for the pilots of the U-2 aircraft. Apparently. Its official government name was, and actually still is, the Nevada Test and Training Range, a unit of Neal's Air Force Base. Doesn't really have the same ring to it though, if you ask me. Other nicknames for the base have been Paradise Ranch, The Ranch, Waterdown, and Dreamland, probably because they're dreaming if they think we don't know that they're holding on to aliens. Anyways, in November of 1959, about 4.5 years after the base was established, a radar testing facility became active. And as always with Area 51, while there is not much information out there as to what the radars are being used for, it has been speculated that their main purpose was to track the detectability of the U-2 aircrafts. Seems pretty obvious, but I feel like it's kind of weird that they didn't just come out and say that after the purpose of the U-2 spycraft was revealed. But I think I've given up on trying to figure out why they release the things they do and don't the things they don't. Anyways, finally on our list today we have the discovery of aliens and the subsequent experimentation on said aliens and their extraterrestrial modes of transportation. Now, in the beginning we already touched on the fact that the military personnel at Area 51 were allegedly able to reconstruct an alien spacecraft using reverse engineering. But just like how when there's smoke there's fire, when there's an alien spacecraft, there must be an alien. Many members of the public believe that not only have the government found and taken into custody the ships of aliens, but the actual aliens themselves. Whether or not they are thin green men with oval heads and bulging eyes is still up for debate. Maybe we should get a petition going in the comments and see if the government will finally comply with the Freedom of Information Act. Or maybe they already have and they don't actually have to tell us everything. Who knows? I'm a YouTuber, not a lawyer. Starting off our list today, we have the absolutely crazy amount of shipwrecks that have occurred in the Gulf of Mexico. In 2018, a report released by Ocean Explorer revealed that oil and gas companies had discovered an outstanding 600 shipwrecks and possible shipwrecks in the Gulf of Mexico while surveying the area at depths of up to 2,316 meters or 9,800 feet. 33 of these ships have been visually confirmed by either divers or remotely operated vehicles as historic vessels. And although only 600 shipwrecks and possible shipwrecks have been discovered by these companies to date, it is estimated that over 4,000 shipwrecks reside on the ocean floor of the Gulf of Mexico, sitting anywhere from the nearshore shallows all the way out to the deepest abyss of the Gulf. But that's not even the weirdest part. While attempting to explore a particular shipwreck, teams experienced submarine malfunctions, failed video monitors, sonar breaking, haywire hydraulics, and self-destructing rovers, which of course begs the question, are some of these shipwrecks possibly cursed, or maybe they contain levels of radiation that affect these machines, or is there some kind of electromagnetic phenomenon going on in these waters that we just haven't discovered yet? Next up, we have the fact that the bottom of the Pacific Ocean is leaking, which sounds terrifying, probably because it is. In April of last year, 2023, scientists discovered that a leak at the bottom of the Pacific Ocean is not spewing water, as they once assumed back in 2015, but rather it is leaking tectonic lubricant with temperatures ranging between 300 and 500 degrees Fahrenheit. The leak sits directly on top of the 600-mile-long Cascadia subduction zone fault, which sits approximately 15 to 20 kilometers or 50 to 65,000 feet below sea level. So why is this absolutely terrifying? Well, scientists believe that this leak could cause one of the strongest earthquakes the US and the world has ever seen, with a magnitude of 9.0, which is just 0.5 less than the largest magnitude earthquake to occur in recorded history. I don't know about you guys, but to me that sounds like a pretty good reason to get the heck out of the ocean. Next up on our list today, we have the mysterious light wheels seen in the Indian Ocean, the South China Sea, and the Persian Gulf. Also known as the Wheels of Poseidon, light wheels are a strange phenomenon in which massive blooms of light illuminate the ocean around a vessel in a circular formation that mimic the spokes of a wheel. While the light itself is pretty easily explainable, bioluminescence, living organisms that emit light through chemical reactions when the water around them becomes agitated, the shape formed by the bioluminescence is incredibly perplexing. Because of this, these wheels have become known as the crop circles of the ocean, and many theories including underwater electromagnetic activities and even alien influence have arisen as a result. Next up, I want to take a moment to talk about all of the wonderful, beautiful, incredibly deadly animals that are lucky enough to call the ocean home. Animals like the Portuguese man-o-war, the blue-ringed octopus, the cone snail, the Australian box jellyfish, and the stonefish, along with so many others. If you want to die a slow and painful death, these creatures are the companions for you. The Portuguese man-o-war is highly toxic and it floats on the surface of the water, making it incredibly easy to come into contact with. Just brushing up against the tentacles of this thing causes intense burning sensations, pain, paresthesia, and even death. The cone snail, while tiny, is also incredibly deadly, loaded with toxins that cause damage to nerve receptors, leading to extreme pain, muscle paralysis, blurred vision, respiratory paralysis, and of course, death. Blue-ringed octopus, small, poisonous, deadly. Its toxins make your muscles unable to contract, leaving your heart unable to pump blood. The Australian box jellyfish can kill you in 5 minutes, and of course the stonefish, which impales you with its sharp dorsal fins before releasing an incredibly powerful toxin into your bloodstream that causes skeletal and muscle paralysis, seizures, convulsion, respiratory arrest, damage to the cardiovascular system, and of course, drumroll please, death exists in the ocean as well. So, can't blame them. That's some pretty scary stuff. Next up, we have the fact that the ocean contains deadly underwater lakes, aka brine pools. At the bottom of the Red Sea, at a depth of around 1,770 meters, scientists discovered something strange. A brine pool, which is made up of highly concentrated seawater, roughly 3 to 8 times saltier than the surrounding ocean. It looks like a pond sitting at the bottom of the sea floor. Super cool to look at, also super deadly to enter. You see, brine pools, believe it or not, contain a lethal amount of saline, salt, which replaces the oxygen content in the water. Brine pools also contain poisonous chemicals, including hydrogen sulfide. While there are some microbes that can survive brine pools, fish, crabs, eels, and humans cannot. And brine pools aren't exclusive to the Red Sea either. The Jacuzzi of Despair is another that scientists have discovered, and this one resides in the Gulf of Mexico. It has a circumference of about 100 feet and it reaches a depth of about 12 feet. Like other brine pools, its water is so dense it refuses to mix with its surroundings, and if you enter it, you will most likely die. Next up, we've got the radioactive waters of the Irish Sea, English Channel, and the Arctic Ocean, as well as the Kara Sea and the Barents Sea. You see, for years, radioactive waste has been improperly disposed of into some of the world's largest bodies of water. A British nuclear fuels plant is responsible for raising the radiation levels of the Irish Sea after repeatedly releasing radioactive waste into its waters. Similarly, a French nuclear reprocessing plant released copious amounts of waste into the English Channel. And if you think that's bad, for decades it has been reported that Russia has been dumping large quantities of radioactive materials into the Arctic Ocean as well as the Kara and Barents Sea. All of this has caused an increase in the radioactivity of not only seawater, but sea life as well. I really don't blame NASA for wanting to keep their lead scientists out of waters contaminated with radioactive materials known to cause fatigue, hair loss, memory loss, concentration problems, nausea, vomiting, headaches, blurry vision, and of course cancer. Next up, we have the fact that our oceans are absolutely littered with dead bodies. In the United States alone, approximately 4,400 unidentified bodies are found in the ocean each year, and globally that number is around 260,000. And these are just the ones that we found that we were unable to identify, meaning that the actual number of bodies floating around or slowly decomposing beneath the surface of the oceans is way more than that, which is both terrifying and disgusting, and also a good reason for anyone to decide not to step foot in the ocean. Personally, there is no way I would give up snorkeling just because of a few bodies floating around in the deep ocean, but if I actually saw one wash up on the shore, I might be inclined to change my mind. So I don't blame you, NASA. Next, we've got those unidentified sounds of the ocean, specifically the Julia and the bloop. The Julia was a noise recorded on March 1st of 1999 by the United States National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, and it sounds like this. While scientists have speculated that the sound was a result of an iceberg either breaking or smashing into another, the true origin of the Julia does remain unknown. And then of course there's also the bloop, another strange sound recorded in the ocean, this time in 1997, and the bloop sounds like this. Like the Julia, scientists believe that the bloop is the sound of an iceberg, probably breaking in half, which is probable, but it's still just speculation, and considering the fact that there have been numerous other sounds recorded by scientists that have been unable to be attributed to anything, let alone icebergs, who's to say the bloop and the Julia aren't the sounds of two giant underwater monsters communicating with one another or asserting dominance to an aquatic challenger? Next up, we've got the possibility that NASA decided to step away from exploring the ocean once they realized our planet was irreversibly doomed. I mean, maybe they have bigger fish to fry than figuring out what kind of big fish reside at the bottom of the ocean. It is possible that they are actively working towards ensuring the future of humanity as we know it, whether that future takes place on Earth or on a distant planet in a faraway galaxy. For all we know, the race to find the next inhabitable planet could already be well underway, and if it is, I guarantee NASA and the United States are working overtime to be the first. We all know how they like to get their flag in there first. And maybe they're doing this because of the fact that there are comets set to collide with the Earth in the next 2,000 years, or perhaps it's the fact that scientists are very well aware that eventually our home galaxy of the Milky Way will be getting swallowed up by our neighboring galaxy, the Andromeda. I don't know, I guess maybe they're looking at the big picture, pulling an Elon Musk, if you will. And then of course there is the theory that NASA is still very much exploring our oceans, but are doing their absolute best to keep things happening under the water, under the radar of the public. As I mentioned in part 1 of this video, many people believe that NASA has made many more discoveries than they have actually shared with us. Underwater cities and societies, gigantic megafauna, and even alien life forms are all possible reasons they might want to keep their findings a secret from the general public. That is, until they figure out their next steps. Speculations surrounding underwater facilities used to study unknown phenomena and massive underwater cages housing the world's largest sea creature, aka the Megalodon, have been circulating the internet for ages. It's possible that an aquatic Area 51 studying unidentified aquatic phenomena exists, and that one day the Pentagon will declassify those documents the way they declassify documents pertaining to peculiar happenings in our atmosphere such as UAPs and UFOs. Only time will tell.
Create a video using exactly this script. Want to see more videos like this one? Click this video now. It's actually part 3 in this series, and it will show you even more shocking UFO encounters that the government has tried to hide. See you guys in that next video.